Today, we're jumping into one of the biggest puzzles in education. How can you really know right in the middle of a lesson if your students are getting it? We're going to break down a powerful technique designed to do exactly that.
That's the million-dollar question for any teacher, right? You've just explained a new concept and now you need to know if it actually landed. Did everyone get it or just the usual suspects with their hands in the air?
And this right here really breaks down the difference. The old way is basically just guessing. You ask, "Any questions?" and you get crickets, or you call on a couple of kids. That's just anecdotal evidence. The show me technique, on the other hand, is all about knowing. It's about getting census-level data from your classroom by seeing what every single student is thinking all at once.
So let's call this what it is, the classroom guessing game. For way too long, teachers have been forced to play it, making huge decisions about where to go next in a lesson based on information that's, well, pretty spotty.
Just think about it for a second. When you only hear from the 2 or 3 students who always shoot their hands up, you get a totally skewed picture of what the whole class understands. It creates this dangerous illusion of mastery, and it can hide the fact that, maybe 70% of the class is completely lost. We have to move past that.
So, what's the alternative? Well, it turns out there's this deceptively simple but incredibly powerful tool. Let's dive into the core idea behind the show me technique.
The whole philosophy can be boiled down to these 3 simple words. Don't guess, know. It's a total shift in mindset. It's about moving from assumptions to certainty, from relying on a tiny sample to getting the full picture.
So how does it actually work? Well, the principle is really straightforward. You just engineer a moment in your lesson where every single student, 100% of them, has to show you their thinking in some visible way all at the exact same time. This forces total participation and makes everyone's thought process accountable.
But here's the really cool part. This isn't just a fancy way to check for understanding. No, its real power is actually rooted in cognitive science. This thing is a learning superpower for students.
The big idea here is something called retrieval practice. Think of your brain like a muscle. Every time a student has to pull an answer out of their memory, they aren't just proving they know it. They are actively making that memory stronger. It's often called the testing effect, and it's one of the most effective ways to build knowledge that actually lasts. Now, obviously, this only works if the question isn't a total cakewalk or impossibly hard. It's got to be in that sweet spot, what scientists call desirable difficulty. You want a task that requires some real mental effort, that productive struggle, That's what really makes the learning stick.
And it's not just about memory. When you do this, you get this whole package of cognitive benefits. It pushes students to think more deeply, it helps them check their own understanding, that's called metacognition, and maybe most importantly, it creates this really safe, low-stakes environment to just practice and make mistakes.
Okay, so you're sold on the concept, but how do you actually do this in a real classroom? Let's get practical and look at the tools.
Before we look at any specific gadgets, you have to understand this one crucial thing. The research is super clear that it doesn't really matter what tool you use. The academic boost comes from the strategy, from the act of every single student responding. You don't need to spend a bunch of money on fancy tech to make this work.
So you've got a few options, and they all have their pros and cons. Hand signals are totally free, and digital clickers give you some nice, clean data. But the research really points to mini-whiteboards as the diagnostic gold standard. Why? Because they're cheap, and this is the big one, they let you see not just the final answer, but how the student got there. That's where the real teaching gold is.
But here's the catch. No matter which tool you pick, this whole technique is only as good as the routines you build around it. In fact, it'll completely fall apart without them.
To pull this off, the teacher has to be, as the source material puts it, like a referee. The expectation for 100% participation has to be crystal clear and unwavering. If students know their response will be checked every single time, they play the game. The second you let that slide, the system starts to crumble. So what does a great routine look like? Well, it's this crisp 4-step dance. First, preparation, getting the materials out fast. Second, working time, where you use little tricks to prevent copying. And then, the magic moment, data collection. You give a clear command like 3, 2, 1, show me, and boom, every answer comes up at the same time. That gives you a true, unfiltered snapshot of the entire class.
So, you've executed the routine perfectly. You're looking out at a sea of whiteboards. Now what? Well, this is the payoff. This is where the real teaching begins.
In just a few seconds, you can scan the room and instantly categorize the data. If more than 90% of the class nailed it, awesome, you can move on. If it's less than 50%, whoa, okay, stop the presses, we need to reteach this whole concept. And if you're somewhere in that middle zone, you know exactly what the specific misconception is, and you can do a quick, targeted fix right then and there.
This is what's called a just-in-time response. Think about it. Instead of waiting for a quiz next week to find out who is confused, you can diagnose the problem and adjust your teaching on the spot. It's the difference between being a reactive teacher and a responsive one.
And this isn't just a feel-good idea. This stuff gets results. The data is absolutely clear. Studies consistently show that classrooms using these active responding techniques see students score significantly higher on exams, in some cases by nearly a full 5%. I mean, that is a huge impact from such a simple shift in strategy.
All right, let's wrap this up with the key takeaways. First, this is all about shifting from guessing to knowing by getting data from 100% of your students. Second, remember it's a powerful learning tool in itself, thanks to retrieval practice. Third, none of this works without airtight routines. Flawless execution is everything. And finally, the whole point is to use that real-time data to make your teaching better in that very moment. So I'll just leave you with this question to chew on. If you had this superpower, the ability to get a live, real-time scan of every student's understanding at any given moment, how would that truly change the way you teach tomorrow?